This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com and Review. And what I'm looking at today is 2023's The Jester, directed by Colin Krawchuk. I really wanted to like The Jester. It revolves around a creepy clown, which is very much in vogue, in that you have the Terrifier movies, done exceedingly well and very profitable. You have the two It films, which also did very well. And you have the upcoming Clown in the Cornfield, from the director of Tucker and Dale vs. Evil, which is a brilliant movie. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's hilarious. Also very gory. And so just the fact that The Jester revolves around a clown gave it potential. A potential, unfortunately, it doesn't really live up to. Now, that's not to say that I've ever thought of clowns as scary. In fact, I find them fairly boring. Though, apparently for a time, it seemed every other person was afraid of clowns. And so, that's interesting. Though, overall, that doesn't really matter to me. I can find them interesting if they're doing interesting things. But in and of themselves, I don't really enjoy them. The Jester revolves around a woman named Jocelyn, who is in, I believe, New Orleans. I could be wrong on that. But she's visiting because her father has just died, seemingly by suicide. Though earlier in the film it shows us that the Jester was the entity who killed him. And Jocelyn is a bit bitter, which is quite understandable when we learn that he left her and her mother. Once again, very relatable. Though the problem with the movie is that it never tells us what the Jester is or why it does what it does. It's clearly a supernatural type creature, but where did it come from? Why is it menacing Jocelyn and her family? Why does it kill people? It just does things, and there's no rhyme or reason to why it does them. Now, if it did it in a very spectacular manner, like, once again, terrifying, say what you will about that movie, Art the Clown is interesting. And the fact that Art the Clown is interesting helps a lot of more difficult things go over better. Conversely, the Jester is not terribly interesting. Like Art the Clown, he doesn't talk. But he also doesn't really do anything all that interesting, though there are moments which are very cool. But overall, he's just not terribly interesting. And this could have been solved by simply letting the viewers know why the Jester is what he is. Or at least give him some background. Is he some kind of guilt demon that's preying upon the feelings that Jocelyn has for her father? I don't know what he is, but that's the confusion. Not only are you not told what he is, but you don't know why he does what he does. He's just not interesting enough to be treated in such a fashion. I mentioned cool moments earlier, and there's a scene I like to call the trick-or-treat scene. The movie happens around Halloween. Though, to be totally honest, if it weren't for these two children trick-or-treating, there'd be no way to tell, because it doesn't really... Oh no, wait, I think the Markov family has a haunt. That's another indicator of the time of year. But besides that, no reason to assume that this happened at Halloween at all. And this lack of focus, lack of identity, if you will, runs through the entire movie. The greatest problem with The Jester, by my reckoning, is that the story is so unfocused that as a viewer you have no idea of why things are happening. And that's a pity because it's well shot, it's well acted, there's some interesting visual effects, and the Jester himself looks fairly creepy, but he doesn't do anything to warrant that look. This movie reminds me very much of the Bye Bye Man in certain ways, except, say what you will about the Bye Bye Man, you understood why he was doing what he did. I'm not saying that movie worked, because it didn't. But one of its issues was not that you didn't understand why he was doing what he was doing. Some of the ways that was shown might have been a bit hackneyed, but still, that was there. Conversely, the Jester, while better looking, I would argue, and better shot than the Bye-Bye Man, gives you no pertinent information about the character. And he doesn't act outrageous enough to warrant that. I mentioned Art the Clown earlier, and his propensity to violence. The violence in that movie is spectacularly gory. Some of the more innovative practical effects I've seen in a movie in years. But that's the thing. That's the hook, pardon the pun, that makes art so interesting. And I should also mention, in reference to Art the Clown, he is genuinely funny at points. And that helps, because once again, it's a clown. While the Jester is more of like a harlequin, which is certainly clown adjacent, it just doesn't really work very well overall. So what do you think? This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com and Review. Do you agree, disagree? Let me know down below. And as usual, consider a like, follow, or buy me a coffee.